Hello everyone, first test, can you hear me? Hello everyone, today we are watching the launch of the TDRS communication satellite. The satellite is owned and operated and also built by NASA. It's a relatively advanced next generation communication satellite with an aimed antenna that is an antenna that is not just shaped like a normal parabola antenna, but specifically shaped to cover the exact area it has to most efficiently. The satellite is part of the space communications network. That is, it will focus on enabling communication between different spacecraft and between spacecraft and Earth. So, for example, it will help establish communication between the ISS and a ground station on Earth when the ISS is not directly in range of any ground station. The ISS can communicate with the ground station via this satellite. Same for other scientific spacecraft like the Hubble telescope or later possibly other telescopes or satellites. The rocket is an Atlas V 401, so the one solid rocket booster configuration that we've also seen in OSIRIS-REx, for example. It is asymmetric, yes, but it does actually work. No worries there. Although it does look a bit weird if you're not used to it, since it seems like it should topple to one side, but it has enough steering power on its main engine to keep the desired trajectory. It will launch into a geostationary satellite in about half an hour. Now the launch window will begin in about 30 minutes, with the launch window extending over 40 minutes. The NASA TV live stream should be on any minute now, and also the anti-space conspiracist will also live stream this launch on his YouTube channel. keep down the commentary a bit, and mostly watch the live stream until shortly before the launch. I will then resume commentary.
From NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, you're watching the live coverage of the launch of TDRS, the latest addition to NASA's Tracking and Data Relay satellite network. Hi, I'm Tori McClendon. Thanks for joining us. Today's launch of the United Launch Alliance Atlas V is scheduled for 8:03 a.m. Eastern with a 40-minute window from Space Launch Complex 41. Here are some quick facts about the TDRS mission. This is the 13th satellite in the TDRS series. The TDRS system provides critical communication for low Earth orbit missions. This is the 37th launch of the ULA Atlas V rocket using the 401 configuration. As you can see, guests and employees have gathered at Kennedy Space Center and surrounding areas to view this launch, and many more have congregated on the beaches and causeways along the Space Coast. On the broadcast, you will hear from the project manager for TDRS, learn more about the spacecraft and launch vehicle, and you will also hear from a space communications expert. Launch of the TDRS spacecraft was originally scheduled to take flight earlier this month on August 3rd. Teams have worked diligently to overcome some processing challenges that occurred over the course of the past few weeks. Their dedication to this mission is evident through the countless hours and tireless efforts leading up to today's launch. We're now about 16 minutes away from liftoff. Kennedy's Josh Finch and Mike Curie are monitoring the countdown activities in the control center. Josh and Mike, how are things progressing for today's launch?
Thank you, Tori. Things are progressing well. We're actually just moments away from a weather briefing from U.S. Air Force Launch Weather Officer Clay Flynn, and we'll bring that to you at T-15. In the meantime, things are progressing toward an on-time liftoff at 8:03 a.m. from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Launch Complex 41.
And at the launch pad, the Atlas V rocket in the Atlas 401 configuration will place the new TDRS satellite into a geosynchronous orbit above the Earth. The 401 configuration includes a 4-meter fairing, a single-engine Centaur second stage, and no solid rocket boosters, or SRBs. The Atlas V was rolled to the launch pad on the mobile launch platform from the nearby Vehicle Integration Facility, which is known as the VIF, Wednesday, and then shortly thereafter it was fueled with RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene.
And we are standing by for the weather briefing now.
Similar to what we saw in 07. We do have light ground winds today like that as well. Team has agreed it is not detrimental as long as no visible liquid being expelled. We're going to continue to monitor that and cease to monitor at T-4 counting. Team recommends proceed. LC copies and concurs. LD concurs. NLM?
NLM concurs.
Now, the last published
T-minus 15 minutes
was about half an hour ago. That
RC conduct weather briefing on Channel 8 weather conference.
With the main value being
Roger.
cloud thickness. Whether this may have changed by now.
LWO RC Channel 8.
LWO.
Please stand by for the weather brief.
Standing by.
LD. LDRC Net 8.
LD is on 8.
NLM.
NLM on 8.
AFLD.
AFLD on 8.
Please proceed, LWO.
Yes, we're looking at the satellite picture of the peninsula of Florida. You can see the cloud mass out to the east. That's associated with showers that have developed in the warmer waters. They really don't pose a threat for us for the balance of the count in the window. The echoes you see to the northeast are anomalous returns. Amble cloud is drifting as far as about maybe 38 miles close to east of Complex 41, but not really going to be a threat for us for the balance of the count or the window. It erodes as it migrates further, as it is blown further away from its parent thunderstorm. Taking a look at the winds out at Complex 41, winds continue to be very light and expected to remain light through the balance of the count in the window from the southwest, and the peak gust should be about 8 knots for the balance of the count. Good agreement with the balloons and not expecting significant change in the balloons for the balance of the count. In terms of the forecast, just looking for a few clouds at 15,000 feet scattered to 25,007 miles visibility. Peak winds from the southwest gusting to 8 showers to the east, but not threatening. And our temperature should be about 80 to 81. 10% chance, very low likelihood, and not really really expecting any issue, but Anvil would be the only thing that's remaining that could possibly be a concern. All LCCs are go and expected to remain go, no change in the 24-hour, and not expecting any lightning for the balance of the count in the window, and proton flux remains at normal background levels. This concludes the weather brief.
You just heard Clay Flynn, launch weather officer from the U.S. Air Force 45th Weather Squadron, reporting that there are light winds. Launch peaks for winds will be 8 knots, and the temperature will be 80 to 81 degrees, and we are 90% go for launch.
Everything is proceeding well on the countdown at this point. Fueling has been underway. The Atlas V first and second stages are being fueled with liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. We're proceeding toward the liftoff at 8:03 a.m. Eastern Time. And so with everything go at this point, at T-minus 11 minutes, 52 seconds and counting, we're going to hand things back from Atlas Launch Control to you, Tori.
Sounds great. Thanks, Josh and Mike. TDRS is part of a larger constellation known as the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System, which serves as a space segment for NASA's space network. Together with a ground segment, it provides communications to low Earth orbiting satellites by way of a continuous data path. Many of NASA's missions rely on the TDRS system and the space network for mission communications, including the International Space Station, the Hubble Space Telescope, and many of NASA's Earth-observing satellites, as well as all current human spaceflight vehicles. Once a spacecraft arrives at Kennedy, a series of processing and integration activities occur to prepare for liftoff. Let's take a look at the processing journey for TDRS and its integration with the Atlas V rocket.
To the Inca. Proceed with load. Roger.
Our colleagues at NASA Edge were able to catch up with the TDRS project manager, Dave Littman, to talk about the purpose of this mission. Let's hear what he has to say.
Dave, TDRS is the last in a series of satellites. But before we talk about that, can we talk a little bit about what TDRS actually is for the system?
Sure. So TDRS, as I think you're aware, is a communications satellite. And it basically is part of the critical lifeline for end-to-end space communications, part of NASA's portfolio that provides service to our orbiting astronauts on the space station, as well as provides a means for scientific missions to relay their science data for discovery to missions here on Earth for scientists to use, analyze, and put together. The Hubble Space Telescope being one prime example of a mission here at Goddard that uses TDRS. So the M mission itself is to provide one additional spacecraft of a constellation to continue serving in that purpose for the operations element of TDRS, which is the space network.
Because this is a series of satellites, is this a redundancy, or does it actually bring added benefit to the overall system?
I wouldn't characterize it as redundancy. What I would characterize it as is continuation. The program was even developed to basically provide replenishment satellites to continue the operations of the existing fleet. The spacecraft have limited lifetimes, although they've exceeded their design lifetimes by far. But they do have a finite life, and we have ended up needing to deorbit at least 2 spacecraft currently. But as the spacecraft age, there's a need for users to continue receiving science, and for the astronauts to continue to provide voice and data back to Earth. And so these spacecraft basically allow the network and the constellation to continue providing that service.
TDRS-M will continue this current system's life for how long?
So each spacecraft has an approximate life, or at least on paper, of 15 years. So into the mid-2020s is what the current projections are. That is subject to change, and it gets evaluated and updated on a yearly basis based on any failures and experiences that we're seeing in terms of performance of the existing fleet.
So how does that work for a mission now? What kind of communication systems do they use to be part of this network?
Typically, a spacecraft will have a transponder where it needs to kind of relay or provide either direct to ground, which it can be done using the near-Earth network today, where it will relay its data that it collects on board as a result of collecting science from whatever sources that it is, whether it's a sun-observing mission or something else. And it needs to find a way to get that data off the spacecraft down to the users here on Earth. You can go direct-to-ground antenna, or in the case of TDRS, a lot of them will uplink their data from a transponder that they fly on their spacecraft to the TDRS, and then it can basically be provided through TDRS as a relay down to the ground. On the other side, it may be that the controllers on the ground want to command their satellite and to tell it to change its orbit or to change the science that it's looking to get, and they can send commands through TDRS in the other direction. TDRS will then relay those commands to their mission such that their spacecraft will then operate on that data, to continue that mission.
Nice, and it's funny because we don't often think of both ways of communicating. We think we like to get the data, but that's a good point. If we need to make corrections or we need to communicate information back to the spacecraft, vital to have this kind of network.
Right. It's not a simplex, it's duplex, right? You've got to go in both directions. Right. That's correct.
We'll have more from our friends at NASA Edge later in the program. For now, let's go back to the control room for an update. Mike and Josh, how are things progressing?
Hi, Tori. Things continue to progress toward launch from Space Launch Complex 41 with the Atlas V rocket with TDRS.
And we're standing by to enter our planned hold, our final planned hold for today. It's a 15-minute hold at the T-minus 4-minute mark. We're about a minute 20 seconds away from that. All the operations today have been following the timeline. As you see, the Atlas V rocket stands on the launch pad at Space Launch Complex 41 on Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, venting liquid oxygen from the Centaur upper stage and the Atlas booster. The rocket is in the final stages of being fueled. Final fueling pressure reached just about this time per the countdown. Weather continues to be 90% favorable, as you heard from 45th Space Wing Launch Weather Officer Clay Flynn. The only concern would be for thick clouds, but there's nothing visible at this time that is going to indicate that we have weather to worry about. Sunshine playing on the crowds gathered at Kennedy Space Center and the surrounding areas for launch today. Everything continues to be go at this point.
Elsie.
15 seconds away from our final hold of the day at T-minus 4 minutes.
Condition is improving.
Standing by for the final hold.
Going in the right direction.
In 3, 2, 1.
But we're still not in yet. Roger.
T-minus 4 minutes and holding. This is a programmed 15-minute hold.
And we are at T-minus 4 and holding.
This planned 15-minute hold allows launch conductor Ed Kidda and the team to conduct final systems checks and resolve any outstanding issues prior to entering the terminal count. Up to this point, all operations have been proceeding per the timeline. RP-1 fuel was loaded aboard the Atlas booster on Wednesday.
Centaur liquid oxygen tanking began just before 6 a.m. Eastern.
Atlas liquid oxygen tanking began about 6:18 a.m.
Centaur engine chill down and Centaur liquid hydrogen tanking began at 6:38 a.m.
Flight control preparations began at 6:53 a.m.
The flight termination system test was conducted at 7:08 a.m.
The fuel fill sequence began at 7:32 a.m. when engineers opened the RD-180 fuel inlet valve to allow RP-1 fuel to wet the engine. It's sort of like priming the pump prior to launch.
45th Weather Squadron Launch Weather Officer updated the launch team with his 90% go forecast at 7:33 a.m.
Upcoming milestones include NASA Spacecraft Mission Director Dave Littman conducting his terminal count readiness poll for TDRS-M at 7:47 a.m.
United Launch Alliance launch conductor Ed Kidham will ask NASA spacecraft coordinator Christy Lawrence to transition TDRS-M to internal power at 7:48 a.m.
And we'll keep you posted as things continue to progress throughout the countdown. Everything continues to be go at this point. And with that, we're launch minus 17 minutes, 15 seconds, remaining in the T-minus 4-minute hold. And we'll send things back to you, Tori.
Thanks, Mike. TDRS-M is the last in a series of 3 third-generation satellites that are designed to extend the overall life of the TDRS network, enabling critical space communications for years to come. TDRS-K launched in 2013, followed by TDRS-L in 2014, now referred to as TDRS-11 and 12. The TDRS-M spacecraft has a high-performance solar panel designed for more spacecraft power to meet growing communication requirements. TDRS-M is a replenishment satellite intended to replace older satellites when they can no longer provide operational services and are retired. Once TDRS-M is in orbit, it will go through a testing and calibration period, and after that testing period is complete, TDRS-M will become TDRS-13. At that time, a decision will be made to place TDRS-13 into service or storage, depending on the needs of NASA's space network. It is NASA's goal to always have at least one TDRS satellite in on-orbit storage as a spare. So once TDRS-M is operational, the spacecraft will be operated from the TDRS ground terminals at White Sands Complex in New Mexico. NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, is responsible for designing, building, integrating, and testing TDRS-M. NASA contracted with Boeing Space Systems for all 3 of the third-generation tracking and data relay satellites, which were manufactured at its factory in El Segundo, California. NASA's Space Communications and Navigation Program, part of the Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters in Washington, is responsible for the TDRS network. Launch management of the Atlas V launch service for TDRS-M is the responsibility of the Launch Services Program at Kennedy, also known as LSP. The LSP team also manages the overall launch effort. That includes overseeing and development of the integration of the rocket with the spacecraft. Let's now take a look at the TDRS-M mission once the spacecraft reaches geosynchronous orbit.
"30 years ago, NASA launched into a new era of high-bandwidth continuous space communication with the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite, TDRS. Today, NASA is continuing this legacy by launching the next generation of satellites.
10, 9,
At
8,
Cape Canaveral,
7,
the TDRS spacecraft
6,
sits atop an Atlas V rocket,
4,
ready for launch.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff. The Atlas V rocket carrying the next generation of tracking and data relay satellites.
After a 4-minute burn, the Atlas V main engine separates from the Centaur engine and drops back to Earth. Shortly after separation of the main engine, the protective shield that covers the payload, called the fairing, separates to reveal the TDRS spacecraft. After boosting the spacecraft to geosynchronous transfer orbit, the TDRS spacecraft separates from the Centaur engine. Shortly after this separation, the 2 folded single-axis antenna reflectors are released to take their natural parabolic shape. With a series of engine firings, the TDRS onboard rocket guides the spacecraft to its final location in geosynchronous orbit. Once arriving at this orbit, the spacecraft starts its deployment sequence by unfolding the first solar array. Next, the 2 single-axis antennas are deployed and locked into position. These antennas are designed to track and communicate with low Earth orbit satellites. After the single-axis antennas are secured into place, the second solar array starts to unfold, and the SGL and Omni antennas are deployed. Once TDRS completes this deployment sequence, It's now ready for testing and calibration before being placed into service. With this edition of TDRS-M, NASA has assured the future of continuous space-to-ground communication.
We would like to welcome those of you just joining us on Facebook Live. Here at NASA Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the Atlas V rocket and TDRS-M spacecraft are poised to lift off for a launch time of 8:03 a.m. Eastern from Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. The first TDRS satellite launched in April 1983 aboard Space Shuttle Challenger. The TDRS-M spacecraft will weigh approximately 7,615 pounds at liftoff. TDRS-M will eventually become TDRS-13, extending space communication well into the 2020s. This is the third TDRS mission for United Launch Alliance. This will be the 72nd launch for ULA on an Atlas V rocket, which, by the way, has 100% mission success to date. The vehicle's height, with the extended payload fairing, is approximately 191 feet, which is about 19 stories tall. We are now about 4 minutes away from liftoff and closing in on the final activities leading to the scheduled liftoff at 8:03 a.m. Eastern. For now, I'll hand you off to Josh and Mike over at the Atlas Launch Control, so they'll take us through the liftoff and main engine cutoff. Josh and Mike.
Thank you, Tori, and welcome to those who are just joining us on Facebook Live. Mike and I are here in the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center, also called the ASOC, where launch teams continue to move through the necessary steps to bring us toward liftoff, currently scheduled at 8:03 a.m. from Space Launch Complex 41 here at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. We do have a 40-minute window for this launch should launch teams need more time, but the weather continues to be favorable. Launch weather officer gave us a 90% go, so that means only a 10% probability of violation. And Mike, we've got a lot of steps that are coming up. What can we expect?
Well, a number of polls have been occurring at this time. Various disciplines here inside the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center, in the Mission Director Center, and the Launch Control Center, where all of the action is occurring today. NASA Launch Manager Tim Dunn just completed a poll a few moments ago where he talked with the NASA team, and he informed the team that we have a go range, we have go weather forecast, not working any major technical issues, and we are proceeding on with the count. The TDRS spacecraft poll has been conducted, and in a few moments, launch conductor Ed Kitta will poll the team for the final go to pick up the countdown. The launch team, managed by NASA Launch Manager Tim Dunn and United Launch Alliance Atlas Launch Director Bill Cullen, and launch conductor Ed Kitta, comprises a number of team members throughout the United States, frankly, and mainly gathered here at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station Space Launch Complex 41 today for launch. During launch conductor Ed Kitta's poll, 27 engineers and managers will be polled for system status and readiness to proceed with the launch.
This is the final status check before launch of all Atlas vehicle systems, ground systems, the TDRS-M spacecraft, and the U.S. Air Force Eastern Range.
We're standing by in about a minute and a half for that poll. Everything continues to go well. Per the timeline, all the activities have been occurring today. RP-1 fuel was loaded aboard the Atlas booster on Wednesday. The Atlas Centaur configuration uses the rocket-grade kerosene RP-1 for the fuel on the booster stage, combined with liquid oxygen. And on the Centaur upper stage, it's similar to what the Space Shuttle used to use. The fuel is liquid hydrogen, the oxidizer liquid oxygen, and together these venerable pair of rockets have sent a number of spacecraft into space, and we stand by again for a successful launch today with no technical issues being worked. We're at launch minus 8 minutes. We remain in our 15-minute T-minus 4-minute hold. We'll be counting you down to coming out of that hold shortly. Crowds are gathered today to watch the launch across the Space Coast, along the beaches here in Central Florida, and the launch gantry at Kennedy Space Center. T-minus 7 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. The Atlas V rocket poised for liftoff at 8:03 a.m. Eastern Time. Launch conductor Ed Kidda will be conducting his final poll of the team.
Go ahead.
At launch minus 7 minutes, about 10 seconds from now. So let's listen in as launch conductor Ed Kidda performs the final polling of the team.
Poll and push the clock 5 minutes until we have a better prediction of our thermal conditioning.
LC copies. Timer LC?
The timer.
Do not release the hold. Roger. LC switch not ready.
So we're going to remain in the T-minus 4 minute hold for a little bit longer. Teams are evaluating a thermal issue with the temperature on the Centaur upper stage. They want to take some additional time to evaluate the issue.
For the TRD.
And we'll stand by for more details.
Line. Looks like we're leveling off there. We have made some gain. But I think we need to discuss increasing that pressure some more.
Roger. ACLC?
ACM1?
Yes, at this time, with the pressure of the engine chill down not meeting requirements for engine chill temperature, please convene the anomaly team and provide a recommendation.
Look.
As you heard, a standard operating procedure whenever there's a technical issue, an anomaly team is convened here inside the Mission Directors Center in the Spaceflight Operations Center, the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Chill down temperature for the Centaur is not at its desired point at this point in the countdown, and teams of engineers and managers will discuss the issue and determine whether or not it is anything that we need to be concerned about today. We do have a 40-minute launch window today that expires at 8:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Our planned liftoff was 8:03 a.m., and at this time we have extended our hold an additional 5 minutes. So we have not come out of the T-minus 4 minute hold, and we will evaluate this technical issue. This is Atlas Launch Control. Once again, we remain in our T-minus 4 minute hold. The hold has been extended for 5 additional minutes to enable teams of engineers and managers to discuss a technical issue with the Centaur upper stage. A new launch time will be assigned once the discussion is over. Again, we have a 40-minute launch window today, and we can launch as late as 8:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Spaceflight Operations Center are evaluating an issue with the chill down system on the Centaur upper stage. There's a thermal issue that has not trended or has not shown and displayed the situation and picking predicted launch times in 5-minute increments. At this point, we expect that we would launch no earlier than 8:13 a.m. Eastern Time. Liquid oxygen chill down system of the Centaur upper stage. Things are trending in the right direction, and managers are coordinating with the TDRS managers, along with the United Launch Alliance launch team headed by Launch Director Bill Cullen, to pick a new T0 time. TDRS managers, along with the United Launch Alliance launch team headed by Launch Director Bill Cullen. At this time, the clocks inside the Mission Director Center and the Launch Control Center have advanced to a T0 time of no earlier than 8:18 a.m. as teams continue to coordinate precise liftoff time. Of no earlier than 8:18 a.m. as teams continue to coordinate precise liftoff time. This is Atlas Launch Control as teams continue to evaluate the technical issue this morning at Space Launch Complex 41. Things continue to trend in the right direction, while we at this point are expecting a liftoff of no earlier than 8 8:18 a.m. Eastern Time. As teams continue to evaluate the technical issue this morning at Space Launch Complex 41, things continue to trend in the right direction, come within limits. Once again, though, we do have a 40-minute launch window today that extends to 8:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Come within limits. Once again, though, we do have a 40-minute launch window today that extends to 8:43 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Atlas Launch Control. We remain in our T-minus 4-minute hold beyond our predicted launch time today as teams continue to evaluate a technical issue with the liquid oxygen chill-down system for the Centaur upper stage. Again, the issue continues to be trending in the right direction. The thermal issue is working its way through. And managers fully expect that within today's launch window, which expires at 8:43 a.m., that we'll be able to clear the issue and launch today and take the TDRS-M spacecraft to orbit. At this time, though, as we continue to advance the hold in 5-minute increments, our no earlier than launch time is 8:23 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Atlas Launch Control.
For the team on Net 1, this is the LC. While we work through our issues with center engine chill, maintain system readiness to pick up with the L7 status check once we do meet the chill down requirement.
This is Atlas Launch Control. You heard Launch Conductor Ed Kidda briefing his team to stand by for their launch minus 7-minute poll within the T-minus 4-minute hold once this issue is cleared in order to achieve liftoff today. Managers and engineers continue to work through the issue, Again, at this point, we're expecting a launch of the Atlas V rocket within the launch window, which expires at 8:43 a.m. Our no earlier than launch time at this time is 8:23 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Atlas Launch Control at T-minus 4 minutes and holding. Recapping where we are today, the Atlas V rocket stands ready for launch. The predicted time originally was 8:03 a.m. with a 40-minute launch window that extends to 8:43 a.m. The Atlas booster and Centaur upper stages are both fully fueled and ready for launch today. Teams encountered a slight thermal issue with the chill down of the liquid oxygen aboard the Centaur upper stage. Thermal conditions were not within limits at the predicted time and have taken a little bit longer than expected in order to get there. So there is optimism that the system will work itself into the proper configuration within today's launch window, and we continue to take measured steps of 5 minutes, extending the hold, while engineers monitor the situation and managers confer with each other from the Atlas system, the launch control team, and the TDRS spacecraft in order to settle on a final T0 time. As of now, the predicted liftoff time is no earlier than 8:28 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Atlas Launch Control.
LCLD, Channel 1.
Go ahead.
Please coordinate a new T0 of 1229 Zulu.
Roger. RCLC.
RC.
Please coordinate a new T0 with a range of 1229Z.
I copy 1229Z.
Timer LC.
The timer.
Please set the clock to the new T0 of 1229Z.
Roger.
Launch conductor Ed Kidda coordinating with range coordinator Dylan Rice to establish a new liftoff time today for the TDRS M launch of 8:29 a.m. Eastern Time. A little less than 10 minutes from now. A little bit more than 10 minutes from now. So teams of engineers here in the Spaceflight Operations Center and the Mission Director Center will repoll, evaluate their systems, and be ready for a new liftoff time of 8:29 a.m.
Centaur lead, LC net 1.
This is Atlas Launch Control. Eager space fans awaiting today's launch at Kennedy Space Center. Every launch draws a crowd. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to watch a rocket launch to space. These folks are standing by for the liftoff now planned for 8:29 a.m. Eastern Time of the Atlas V rocket carrying the TDRS-M spacecraft to orbit.
LC, red line monitor.
LCRC1.
Go ahead.
New T0 of 1229 Zulu has been approved by the range.
Roger.
LC, red line monitor.
Go ahead.
I can verify that both of the measurements are now in band and more than one toggle above the limit violation.
Roger, so you can give me step 950?
Correct.
The technical issue has worked its way through. All systems are go.
Okay, radar, brief the...
We are 8 minutes, 19 seconds away from the planned liftoff today.
LE.
NLM?
NLM.
Proceed, AC.
Okay, as just reported, we are now within the required band. After the couple of adjustments of the chill down pressure, we recommend proceeding.
LC copies and concurs. LD?
LD concurs.
NLM?
NLM concurs.
NASA Launch Manager Tim Dunn,
Team on net 1.
standing to the left of the screen,
Status check.
concurs, and the team will continue on with the count. We're about 45 seconds away from launch conductor Ed Kidda performing his final polling of the team for a predicted launch today of 8:29 a.m.
All steps are complete prior to the status check.
Standing by for launch conductor Ed Kidda's poll, the launch minus 7-minute poll that will take us out of our T-minus 4-minute hold.
Status check to proceed with terminal count. Atlas systems. Propulsion. Go. Hydraulics. Go. Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
Water.
Go.
Centaur systems. Propulsion.
Go.
Pneumatics.
Go.
LO2.
Go.
LH2.
Go.
Has gas.
Go.
Electrical systems. Airborne.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Facility.
Go.
RFFTS.
Go.
Flight control.
Go.
GCQ.
Go.
COM.
Go.
Timer.
Go.
Umbilicals.
Go.
ECS.
Go.
Redline monitor.
Go.
Quality.
Go.
Op safety manager.
Go.
ULA safety officer.
Go.
Vehicle system engineer.
Go.
Anomaly chief.
AC is go.
Range coordinator.
Clear to proceed.
Launch director.
LD is go, and you have permission to launch.
Proceed with the count. Timer set count to start at 12:25 Zulu for a planned T0 of 12:29 Zulu.
Roger.
Count will start at 12:25 Zulu for a planned T0 of 12:29 Zulu.
As you've just heard, polling is complete and the team has been given a go for launch. The countdown will resume here shortly.
Coming up to 5.5 minutes away from launch. At launch minus 5 minutes, launch conductor Ed Kidda will ask NASA's spacecraft coordinator Christy Lawrence to verify the TDRS-M is on internal power.
TDRS-M spacecraft mission director Dave Littman will verify the spacecraft is on internal power at launch minus 5 minutes.
And we're 5 minutes away from launch, about 1 minute away from coming out of the hold. Atlas liquid oxygen, Centaur liquid oxygen, and Centaur. And we're standing by to come out of our hold in 10 seconds.
Three, two, one, mark.
We are at T minus 4 minutes and counting.
T minus 3 minutes, 55 seconds.
Ground pyros enabled.
Flight Control Officer verifies ground pyrotechnics for release of the Atlas at T0 have been enabled. T minus 3 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. T minus 3 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. At T minus 3 minutes, topping of liquid oxygen will be secured and the Atlas tanks will be at flight pressure.
T minus 3 minutes. T minus 2 minutes, 50 seconds.
Yes, internal.
And the flight termination system is now internal.
Atlas tanks at flight pressure.
T minus 2 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. Atlas rocket fully fueled, ready to go. Weather is go. Headed for liftoff at 8:29 a.m.
One minute 59.
Vehicle internal.
155.
Launch
Securing Centaur LH2.
150.
Securing Centaur LO2.
The Atlas and Centaur has power is now internal.
140.
Launch enabled.
137.
SAS armed.
Flight termination system has been armed. T minus 1 minute 30 seconds and counting.
One minute 20 seconds.
OCUs armed.
SCS count started.
115. 110.
Vent valves locked.
Centaur liquid oxygen and hydrogen vent valves closed for flight.
Minus 1 minute.
Rock, report range status.
Range green.
Launch conductor Ed Kidda, status is the eastern range.
And the range is go. Under a minute away from launch.
T minus 40 seconds.
The Centaur tanks will reach flight pressure at T minus 30.
T minus 28. 25.
Status check.
Go Atlas.
Go Centaur.
Go TDRS-M.
All systems are go. T-minus 15 seconds and counting.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of TDRS-M on the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. TDRS-M securing space-to-ground communication for NASA's low Earth orbit operations, including the International Space Station.
Atlas beginning engine yaw maneuver to steer to its planned path, an inclination of 26.2 degrees. You're hearing the voice of Patrick Moore providing launch vehicle ascent data. Patrick is the United Launch Alliance Denver Network Operations Center Command Control Center.
Pump speeds and injector pressures all looking good. Now
Reading the
passing
data
45
coming directly
seconds
from the
into
rocket.
flight.
The Atlas rocket carrying TDRS-M reached supersonic speed at 1 minute and 20 seconds into flight.
Now passing 1 minute into flight. Vehicle is now 3 miles in altitude and traveling at 1,100 miles per hour.
Standing by for max Q.
Now passing 1 minute and 15 seconds into flight.
32 seconds into flight.
Mach 1, Atlas 5 is now supersonic. One minute, 30 seconds into flight. Now passing through max Q, maximum dynamic pressure.
This is the point when mechanical stress on the rocket reaches its peak because of the rocket's velocity and resistance created by the
The
atmosphere.
RD-180 is throttled down to 95% thrust as expected. Engine response looks good. This engine thrust profile will continue until the vehicle reaches a programmed 5G acceleration limit.
About 2 minutes into the flight of
And now
Atlas.
passing 2 minutes into flight, approximately 2 minutes remaining in the first stage of flight. Vehicle trajectory traveling right down the middle of the range track, looking good. RD-180 engine operating parameters also looking good.
Booster engine cutoff slated for 4 minutes 2 seconds after launch.
The Atlas V rocket now weighs just 1/2 of what it did at launch, burning propellant at a rate of almost 2,600 pounds per second. And vehicle has gone to closed loop guidance. Now passing 2 minutes 30 seconds into flight. And RCS pyro valve has been fired. Centaur reaction control system now pressurizing to flight levels. Atlas V is now 30 miles in altitude, 43 miles downrange distance, traveling at 4,700 miles per hour. And now passing 3 minutes into flight, approximately 1 minute remaining until booster engine cutoff. RD-180 continues to perform well. Vehicle trajectory continuing down the middle of the range track.
ULA's Patrick Moore providing vehicle ascent data. 3 minutes 20 seconds into flight.
Now passing 3 minutes 30 seconds into flight. Mach 10. And vehicle has reached the 5G throttle limit. And we've begun boost phase chill down.
Less than 30 seconds away from booster engine cutoff.
Three minutes 50 seconds into flight, standing by for BECO momentarily.
6 seconds after BECO, the Centaur second stage will separate from the Atlas booster.
And we have BECO, booster engine cutoff, standing by for stage step.
10 seconds after
We
separation.
have good indication of stage separation.
The Centaur single RLC engine ignites for the first time.
We have ignition and full thrust on the RL-10.
The RL-10 produces 22,900 pounds of thrust and burns for just under 8 minutes.
And we have good indication of fairing separation. This is the first of 2 planned burns for today's mission. This first burn should last approximately 13 minutes and 40 seconds.
The payload fairing protecting TDRS-M during its flight through the atmosphere
And
has been
RL-10 engine
jettisoned.
operating parameters all looking good. Vehicle trajectory continuing down the middle of the range track. The Centaur is now 107 miles in altitude, 350 miles downrange distance, traveling at 11,160 miles per hour. And the reaction control system has begun periodic firings to maintain thermal conditioning as expected. The Centaur propellant utilization system has gone to closed loop control. Now passing 5 minutes, 30 seconds into flight. Initial look at booster performance shows a near nominal performance. Data quality continuing to look good from this initial phase of flight. Now passing 6 minutes into flight. The Centaur is now 145 miles in altitude, 560 miles downrange distance, traveling at 11,500 miles per hour. Now passing 6 minutes, 30 seconds into flight, RL-10 continuing to perform well. Chamber pressures and pump pressures all looking good.
About 11 minutes remaining in the Centaur burn prior to MECO 1.
And vehicle body rates all remaining very stable for this first Centaur burn. And the periodic RCS firings for thermal conditioning have warmed up the RCS lines to near bottle temperatures. And engine pressures all continuing to remain very stable, looking good. Centaur is now 173 miles in altitude, 815 miles downrange distance, traveling at 12,000 miles per hour.
Eight minutes into the flight of TDRS-M. Centaur upper stage continuing with its burn.
And the RL-10 is operating as expected now, making slight modifications to the propellant utilization. Now passing 8 minutes, 30 seconds into flight, RL-10 continuing to perform very well. Vehicle trajectory continuing down the middle of the range track. Centaur is now 187 miles in altitude, 1,080 miles downrange distance, traveling at 12,800 miles per hour.
Computer graphics showing the TDRS-M spacecraft atop the Centaur upper stage. Everything continues to go well. 9 minutes, 22 seconds into flight. Here inside the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center at the Mission Director Center, mission managers watching the progress of the liftoff today.
And RL-10 continuing to perform well. Centaur PU requesting a near nominal mixture ratio.
This is the Launch Control Center inside the Spaceflight Operations Center. The team of launch engineers that successfully saw to the liftoff of Atlas and Centaur.
Now passing 10 minutes into flight. Centaur is now 190 miles in altitude, 1,360 miles downrange distance, traveling at 13,700 miles per hour. And vehicle trajectory continuing down the middle of the range track. RCS activity is as expected, continuing with periodic firings to maintain thermal conditioning of the system.
Just about 7 minutes remaining in the Centaur first burn today, taking the TDRS spacecraft to its initial point in space.
And now passing 11 minutes 30 seconds into flight, RL-10 continues to perform very well. Chamber pressure is remaining stable, looking good within expected ranges. Propellant utilization system continuing to request a near nominal mixture ratio, and RCS firings continuing periodically as planned to maintain thermal conditioning. And the Centaur is now 178 miles in altitude, 1,790 miles downrange distance, traveling at 15,200 miles per hour.
Patrick Moore from United Launch Alliance providing vehicle ascent commentary for us.
And we are just about 5 minutes away from second stage
now passing
Centaur
13
engine.
minutes into flight, approximately 5 minutes remaining in this first Centaur burn.
About 5 minutes away from the second stage main engine cutoff. After that, there will be a long coast phase which will last approximately 90 minutes before spacecraft separation.
Now passing 13 minutes 50 seconds into flight. Centaur is now 153 miles in altitude, 2,290 miles downrange distance, traveling at 17,000 miles per hour. And approximately 4 minutes remaining in this first Centaur burn. RL-10 continues to perform very well. Engine pressures all remaining stable. Centaur propellant utilization system continuing to actively control, and RCS periodic firings continuing on as planned. Body rates in pitch, on, roll, all remaining very stable near zero.
Just about 3 minutes remaining in this Centaur burn.
Now passing 15 minutes into flight, approximately 3 minutes remaining to a nominal MECO. And now passing 15 minutes, 25 seconds into flight. Centaur is now 130 miles in altitude, 2,730 miles downrange distance, traveling at 18,800 miles per hour. And now passing 16 minutes into flight, approximately 2 minutes remaining to a nominal MECO. And Centaur engine operating parameters continue to look good. Our CS system continuing to perform well. Periodic firings for thermal conditioning are continuing as planned. And the reaction control system lines are very close to bottle temperature, as expected.
Just about 1 minute left in this burn of the Centaur engine.
Now passing 17 minutes into flight. Less than 1 minute remaining to a nominal MECO time. Centaur is now 3,250 miles downrange distance, traveling at just over 21,000 miles per hour. And launch vehicle is now orbital. Now passing 17 minutes, 30 seconds into flight. Standing by for MECO 1 momentarily. And we have cut off. And we have engaged the 4S settling on the thrusters. Body rates remaining stable after shutdown. Actual MECO time occurring very close to predicted MECO time, as expected.
With main engine cut off of the second stage Centaur. Another burn will follow after an hour and a half after the coast period. This burn is scheduled for 1 hour and 48 minutes and 4 seconds mission elapsed time, or 10:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. With main engine cutoff, we've now entered the long coast phase. Launch today of the Atlas V from Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral happened at 8:29. And with that, we'll go back to Tori McClendon.
Thanks, Josh. So as you just heard, we entered into a long coast phase that will last approximately 90 minutes before spacecraft separation. We will continue with a live coverage for the final part of this mission, beginning at 9:45 a.m. Eastern. In the meantime, we'll leave you with launch replays.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. We have liftoff of TDRS M on the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. TDRS M securing space-to-ground communication for NASA's low Earth orbit operations, including the International Space Station.
Atlas should yaw maneuver to steer to its planned path at inclination of 26.2 degrees.
R180 engine pressure.
Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of TDRS M on the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. TDRS M securing space-to-ground communication for NASA's low Earth orbit operations, including the International Space Station.
Atlas should yaw maneuver to steer to its planned path.
Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of TDRS M on the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. TDRS M securing space-to-ground communication for NASA's low Earth orbit operations, including the International Space Station.
Atlas should yaw maneuver to steer to its planned path at inclination of 26.2 degrees.
R180 engine pressure.
You're hearing the voice of Patrick Moore providing launch vehicle ascent data. Patrick is the United Launch Alliance Denver Network Operations Center Command Control Center.
Pump speeds and injector pressures all looking good. Now
Reading the
passing
data coming
45
directly
seconds
from the
into
rocket.
flight.
The Atlas rocket carrying TDRS M will reach supersonic speed at 1 minute and 20 seconds into flight.
Now passing 1 minute into flight. Vehicle is now 3 miles in altitude and traveling at 1,100 miles per hour.
Standing by for max Q or
Now passing
maximum
1 minute
dynamic
15
pressure.
seconds into flight.
Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of TDRS-M on the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. TDRS-M, securing space-to-ground communication for NASA's low Earth orbit operations, including the International Space Station. Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of TDRS-M on the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. TDRS-M, securing space-to-ground communication for NASA's low Earth orbit operations, including the International Space Station.
Atlas beginning a pitch and yaw maneuver to steer to its planned path at inclination of 26.2 degrees.
RD-180 engine pressure.
You're hearing the voice of Patrick Moore providing launch vehicle ascent data. Patrick is the United Launch Alliance Denver Network Operations Center Command Control Center.
Pump speeds and injector pressures all looking good. Now
Reading the
passing
data coming
45
directly
seconds
from the
into
rocket.
flight.
The Atlas
And
rocket
observing,
carrying TDRS-M
nominal
will
flight
reach
control
supersonic speed at 1 minute and 20 seconds into flight.
Now passing 1 minute into flight. Vehicle is now 3 miles in altitude and traveling at 1,100 miles per hour.
Standing by for max Q or
Now passing
maximum
1 minute
dynamic
15
pressure.
seconds into
a minute
flight.
32 seconds into flight.
Mach 1, Atlas V is now supersonic. One minute, 30 seconds into flight. Now passing through max Q, maximum dynamic pressure.
This is the point when mechanical stress on the rocket reaches its peak because of the rocket's velocity and resistance created by the
The
atmosphere.
RD-180 is throttled down to 95% thrust as expected. Engine response looks good. This engine thrust profile will continue until the vehicle reaches a programmed 5G acceleration limit.
About 2 minutes into the flight of
And now
Atlas.
passing 2 minutes into flight, approximately 2 minutes remaining in the first stage of flight. Vehicle trajectory traveling right down the middle of the range track, looking good. RD-180 engine operating parameters also looking good.
Booster engine cutoff slated for 4 minutes 2 seconds after launch.
The Atlas V rocket now weighs just 1/2 of what it did at launch, burning propellant at a rate of almost 2,600 pounds per second. And vehicle has gone to closed loop guidance. Now passing 2 minutes 30 seconds into flight.
Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of TDRS-M on the Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. TDRS-M, securing space-to-ground communication for NASA's low Earth orbit operations, including the International Space Station.
Closed-loop control.
Atlas beginning a pitch and yaw maneuver to steer to its planned path at inclination of 26.2 degrees.
RD-180 engine pressures look good. Pump speed's also looking good. Now passing 30 seconds into flight.
You're hearing the voice of Patrick Moore providing launch vehicle ascent data. Patrick is the United Launch Alliance Denver Network Operations Center Command Control Center.
Pump speeds and injector pressures all looking good. Now
Reading the data coming
45
directly
seconds
from the
into
rocket.
flight.
The Atlas
And
rocket carrying
observing,
TDRS-M
nominal
will
flight
reach
control
supersonic
disturbance.
speed at 1 minute 20 seconds into flight.
Now passing 1 minute into flight. Vehicle is now 3 miles in altitude and traveling at 1,100 miles per hour.
Standing by for max Q or
Now passing
maximum
1 minute,
dynamic
15
pressure.
seconds
A
into
minute
flight.
32 seconds into flight.
Mach 1, Atlas 5 is now supersonic.
So as we've heard, the launch is not quite over yet. There will be a final circularization burn once the altitude of the geostationary orbit is reached. That will be in about 1.5 hours.
will extend space communication well into the 2020s.
Neil, TDRS-M is a part of what communications network?
Well, so TDRS-M is part of the space network. It will be the final spacecraft in the third generation fleet that belongs to the space network.
How many networks are there?
So there are a total of 3 networks. We have the space network, we have the near-Earth network, and we have the deep space network. One of the benefits of the space network is the fact that it offers a capability that you wouldn't necessarily get with the near-Earth network and the deep space network as it relates to low Earth communications. As many people know, the Earth is made up of 71% water, with the other 29% taking up land. And so it's not very easy to go and stick ground stations in the oceans. So it's very difficult to maintain communications over those regions using traditional methods. TDRS allows you to be able to communicate over those regions specifically and maintaining communications like you were if you had a ground station there. And the benefit really comes in when it comes to human spaceflight. When the crew members are flying on the International Space Station over water, they are still able to communicate with the folks back at home. And the only way they could do that is with TDRS.
You talk about launch. Will the TDRS network have anything to do with the launch of the actual TDRS-M satellite?
Absolutely. So it's actually very self-serving. With Atlas V, TDRS will be pointing directly at that rocket and be able to provide communication services and provide the necessary data to assess the performance of that launch vehicle as it takes TDRS-M into its geostationary orbit.
Now, TDRS not only handles US-based launches, they handle them from all around the world?
Absolutely, yes. So one of the things that we do in our office specifically is integrate all these different missions with the space network and all the different necessary network assets, such as the near-Earth network. Case in point, for our JAXA counterparts, the Japanese Space Agency, TDRS is there and basically waiting for HTV, the Japanese cargo vehicle for the space station, to arrive into orbit and then provide communication services. One of the things that we are also doing with commercial crew programs is ensuring that TDRS is available and providing continuous communications via TDRS-M and any other TDRS that happen to be located in the Atlantic Ocean region. And with that, we will be able to provide continuous communications as well as continuous data back to the folks at Hawthorne, in the case of SpaceX, back to Mission Control Center Houston, for Starliner, and for the folks that essentially run the missions day to day.
TDRS-M is the last in this series of communications satellites being launched. What is the future for near-Earth space communications beyond TDRS-M?
So beyond TDRS-M, there are multiple initiatives already underway. Many folks already know that there are small companies out there that are trying to do the same thing with commercial ground stations. We here at NASA are trying to do something even more exotic. We're going more into optical communications, and we are going to be showing demonstrations of that, both from a geostationary-based communication system. We'll be doing it from the space station, and in the future, on the second Orion mission from the moon, we will be planning on doing a laser communications operation right from the Orion spacecraft, from the crew members back to the ground. With that, you'll be able to go and observe 4K UHD video right from the moon.
We would like to thank our friends at NASA Edge for providing such valuable insight into this mission. We are now coming up on the final mission milestones, including spacecraft separation. Let's go back to Josh and Mike in the control room for final updates. Josh and Mike.
Thank you, Tori. Much has been accomplished here at Atlas Launch Control inside the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center with a liftoff at 8:29 of the Atlas V rocket with TDRS. We now wait for the final milestones leading up for the final deployment of TDRS.
The Centaur engine is going to restart for a burn of less than a minute to place TDRS in its proper orbit to begin the mission. That burn is scheduled for just after 10:17 a.m. Eastern Time, so we're about 2 minutes away from the burn.
The RL-10 vehicle body rates have zeroed out in preparation for the burn.
We're listening to Patrick Moore, United Launch Alliance vehicle ascent commentator, giving us an update on the status of the Centaur, which has been in a coast phase for nearly 90 minutes after the successful launch at 8:29 a.m. today. The Atlas booster separation about 4 minutes into flight, and then the first Centaur main engine burn that ended again about an hour and a half ago. The spacecraft had been passing over the Earth, looking for the ideal location, the perfect place in space to put TDRS to begin its many-year journey to provide communication for all of NASA and other users. Just about 1 minute away from the burn.
Passing 1 hour 47 minutes into the flight, approximately 1 minute remaining until main engine start. Standing by for the beginning of the pre-start sequence momentarily. And we have fuel pre-start on the RL-10.
We are coming up on the restart of the Centaur second stage, a burn known as MES2, Centaur Main Engine Start 2. This will be about a 1 minute burn.
Standing by for ignition. We have ignition and full thrust on the RL-10. RL-10 chamber pressure is looking good, maintaining a stable value. Vehicle body rates remaining stable after initial startup transients. And Centaur again requesting an oxidizer-rich mixture in the propellant utilization system. RL-10 pressures remaining stable. Standing by for MECO momentarily.
Standing by for the Centaur main engine cutoff 2, after which TDRS-M will separate from Centaur at 10:22 and 47
and we have MECO,
seconds.
main engine cutoff.
We have main engine cutoff.
We are now entering into a 9-minute coast duration prior to spacecraft separation. Centaur has
So the Atlas booster and the Centaur upper stage have done their jobs today and delivered the TDRS spacecraft to the appointed location in the sky. The next major event is the separation of TDRS from the Centaur. Once again, we do not expect to see live video of the separation. However, we may receive a video playback. If we are still on the air, we will show that to you. Otherwise, you'll be able to watch video at www.nasa.gov.
Slight correction to earlier statements, only a 5-minute coast duration between MECO and spacecraft SEP. And after a quick look at the MECO 2 OPM, actual values for apogee, perigee, inclination, all very close to pre-flight predicted values. And the Centaur is beginning to spin up in preparation for spacecraft separation.
CSR, this is SMD.
Hot mic.
We're just about a minute away from spacecraft separation of TDRS-M. TDRS-M is part of a larger constellation known as the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite System, which serves as the space segment for NASA's space network.
Continuing to accelerate the spin up to the required value for spacecraft separation. And a little over 1 minute remaining until spacecraft SEP.
Telemetry-driven graphic animation depicting what the Centaur rocket is doing as it spins up to the separation speed. Separation now less than a minute away. Targeted for 10:22 and 47 seconds a.m. Eastern Time.
Approximately half a minute remaining until spacecraft separation. Vehicle continuing to spin up almost at the required rate for spacecraft SEP. Standing by for separation. And we have good indication of successful separation of the TDRS-M spacecraft. Vehicle now spinning down after separation.
As the spacecraft soars high above the Indian Ocean, west of Australia, NASA's TDRS-M spacecraft flies free for the first time.
And congratulations all around inside the Mission Director Center, at the Atlas Spaceflight Operations Center, at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida following the successful deploy of the TDRS-M spacecraft. Our NASA launch manager, Tim Dunn, sharing hugs with his team, will be on his way to talk with us shortly. He is from NASA Launch Services Program at Kennedy Space Center, and he'll be talking to us about the successful launch of Atlas and TDRS-M this morning. And we'll be standing by for the interview with Tim Dunn momentarily. This is Atlas Launch Control, and after a successful launch today and the successful deploy of the TDRS-M satellite, we are very pleased to be joined by our NASA launch manager from NASA's Launch Services Program here at Kennedy Space Center, Tim Dunn.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be here.
It was a beautiful launch and a great mission. We had a little bit of a delay earlier on, and I wondered if you could just give us an overview of what that was all about.
Oh, sure. Be glad to. So obviously, there's a lot of relief on the team right now, a lot of celebration, a lot of excitement. Love spacecraft separation. It's the best part of a launch campaign. So many hours are put into getting to this exact point when you know you have a healthy satellite that you've just separated from the launch vehicle about to go do its mission that it was intended for. So we had a beautiful morning, great weather, great rocket prop loading with cryos, no problems there, power on sequence, went really well. And as we were chilling the Centaur engine down, we noticed one of the chill down parameters on the thermal conditioning for the LOX side was not quite getting cold enough in time to meet the original 8:03 a.m. T0. So we need a little extra time. So you heard a little bit of discussion on the net. What we wanted to do was maximize our opportunity and try to preserve as much of our 40-minute window as possible. So you heard us kind of stepping through from a 8:03 to about an 8:15, 8:16, 8:18, and then we knew it was probably out around the 8:30 time frame. So that's what you heard as we were marching through that, because should we not have launched on that opportunity, we wanted to leave ourselves 10 or 15 minutes on the backside to get another potential recycle. So appreciate everyone's patience. I know those, when you're not part of the team that's working the anomaly, and you don't look at the data, it gets a little bit frustrating, and you're not sure, wait, when are these guys going to launch today? Are they not? We don't know. But ULA did a magnificent job of managing the situation, diligently mapping out and extrapolating the data to give us that opportunity and let us all target in on that 8:29 opportunity.
There was a lot of conversation going on nets behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
With you and Bill Cullen, the United Launch Alliance launch director, and Ed Kidda, the launch conductor, and their teams, along with the TDRS-M spacecraft team, in working your way through that and coordinating a new T0 time.
Yes, you may have heard my discussions with the spacecraft side, because TDRS-M was rock solid in the payload fairing, ready to launch at any point during our 40-minute window. But I need to give the spacecraft mission director a heads up so that he can prepare the downrange assets to know when the new T0 is. So you heard a lot of that discussion, but I'll just take a moment to extend your comments about the team, that you may just hear guys like a launch director, an NLM talking, but there are thousands of people that we represent, from ULA to NASA Goddard, NASA KSC, NASA headquarters, and then Boeing, who built the spacecraft. They've got a wonderful team that built this satellite and got it ready for today, and it's going to operate on orbit for what we hope is 10 or 15 years. So a great day for the team. It's always a great day when you launch, and we're going to really celebrate this one. And one thing, Mike, I've got for you here is, I love the NASA meatball as much as any other person in our agency, but I also brought you something here.
Thank you very much.
The TDRS-M pin. And I got a second one because I was watching you and Josh. You guys, I want you to put these on and be proud of TDRS, because you're part of our team.
We will do that, Tim. Thank you so much. And thank you once again on a very successful launch today at 8:29 a.m. Eastern Time. It was a beautiful day, and congratulations. Great job managing the team.
Thank you.
And with that, we will sign off from Atlas Launch Control and hand things back to you, Tori.
Thanks, Mike. Well, that wraps up today's coverage of the launch of NASA's TDRS-M, and it was well worth the wait. For more information about this mission, visit www.nasa.gov/TDRS. We will now leave you with live launch replays from NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
So this ends the official live stream with the successful separation of TDRS-M from its center upper stage. I will now close this live stream and set the 24/7 ISS live stream back up. The next event will be tomorrow, the launch of a Japanese H-2A rocket carrying Michibiki's 3 communication satellite into a elliptical geosynchronous orbit. The launch has a 9-hour launch window starting at 5 AM GMT. I expect the launch to happen somewhere within the earlier part of that launch window, of course, but it could extend up to 9 hours. Now I will most likely not be able to live stream the Falcon 9 Formosat 5 launch or the Minotaur 4 OOS 5 launch coming up next week. I will upload footage of these launch after the event, but I will at least most likely not be able to stream either of these launches live. So the next live stream will most likely be the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle with IRNSS on August 28. So with this I will close this live stream, and as always, thanks for watching.